Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. It's Sunday Sessions, 1st of November, 2000. Yes, 1st of November, 2020. So thanks very much for joining me. This is our weekly time of exploring nature-centered folklore, connecting this with your favorite sanctuary, wherever that is in this weather. Are you outside or have you got this lovely inside sanctuary? Wherever it is, amongst the shelter of the trees, up a hill, wherever you are, I hope you're connecting with this on this 1st of November and expressing your inspired visions from this sanctuary. It's an affirmations time, isn't it? Do that through your writing, art, crafts, performance, problem solving, and even your vocation. Now, today's Sunday session is listed as Samhain traditions. But as I was preparing for this, I realized I'd entered into a very vast subject. And now I think it should have a different title, because what's going to be more appropriate for this session today is the origins of Samhain and Halloween. So next Sunday, a lot of this will be spilling over, and that'll get more themed on the Samhain traditions. So I trust you will enjoy this, find it fascinating. I'm going to speak quite a bit on a few locations around Ireland, what went on at them, what still goes on at them, that seems to originate into Samhain and Halloween and the traditions that we still enjoy sharing today and how we know them today. So I hope this is going to inspire you how to revere and celebrate this time right now as we're in the beginning of November. Next Sunday, I'm going to branch out in traditions more during the Samhain gatherings, as I say. So I hope you will join in with that. Now, we've got some lovely guests coming up. She sort of disappeared at the moment, but Linda Rosewood's going to be on. You loved her last time when she shared a poem with us. So Linda will be... she's actually here, and she'll be reciting her Ornagot poem in full herself instead of the crumpled up one that I did last week, if you remember. We got Chandler Nichols, a lovely poet, a lovely Sunday Sessions regular now. So delighted to have something from her. B. Smith, stunning poet, who've been trying to get on the sessions for quite a while on the show. And again, after everybody loved the song by Howard Hawksley last week, and he's back. And he's got a lovely traditional Samhain ghost song that you're probably familiar with, but maybe with a different tune. So let's get rolling with this and seeing who's with us today and see what I should be coming up with. Right, there's a few of you commenting, and I forgot to ask, and you know the routine. Yes, thanks, Kimberly. Good morning to you. Snow is starting to melt. Oh, goodness me. And so chilly past few days. We've got that coming up at the end of this week. It's fairly mild here, fairly wet. We had a kind of a storm yesterday. So lovely. Thank you for being here. And the lovely Donna is here. Good morning to you as well. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much. And anybody else who's watching, who's coming on later, watching the archive, please comment. Please say where you're from. In fact, I think I might type that in now because I forgot to do that at the beginning. We're so busy, technical issues as well. So here we go. There we go. Yeah, all right, we get that onto the chat. And so everybody, right, so there we go. So let's move along here and see what we got. Now, for the third week running, what I'm going to do, yes, third week, we had the dragons, and we had, I'm forgetting what we did have. We had the dragons and serpents, didn't we? 1 week. Last week, how can I forget? It'll come back to me. Anyway, this is the third week, and I'm going to return to the Ornagot cave at Rathcrow and Roscommon. There we are. We got the cave there. Just so take the banner so you can actually see. So I'm going to return there, and we're going to go to the hill of Tlachtga, there's a wee sort of, that is often referred to as the birthplace of Samhain, and later the Halloween traditions. And this is due to the fire. There's a fire there, and I'm going to show you better pictures of that. But maybe the Onagok Cave and its stories, the origins that we revere at this time, and I'm going to be explaining why a little bit. It's because of this character here. Because, as I say, 2 Sundays ago, in the Fire Dragons and Serpents, I shared the story about Emin Macha, the triple-headed dragon there. So she's Eileen, she's going to come up a fair bit today, I think. And but another Onagok folklore is Odrus, born to a fiery serpent, but this time, instead of coming out of the cave, actually was dragged. There's stories in Rathcrowan about a woman being dragged by a cow. Well, I know more about, a little bit, a story of Odrus, who had, unfortunately, a similar story to Ellen, but she was actually dragged by a serpent up to the Caish Caves here, and that's where she became the water that was released onto land the following Imbolc. But anyway, I'm going to stick to Eileen. One of the varied stories, unfortunately, of Eileen is that she was raped by 3 cruel lads, and Eileen was born, well, her mother was raped by 3 cruel lads, and Eileen was born out of that act, and that's how she was born with that dragon with the 3 heads. The embarrassment of this actually caused her to retreat into the Onagok Cave, but she would emerge every so on with flames from her nostrils. As I said a couple of weeks ago, I'm really repeating what I was saying then. And through doing so, and every time she came out of this entrance here with her red peacocks, which and they all go off. It's always like Santa going off with a deer into the sky, because it said that she had goblins making things inside as well. But as she retreated from there, she would visit Tlachtga and blast fire over Tlachtga, and then she would visit the hill of Emin Macha in Armagh, which I'm going to be talking about as well, and blast fire there. And I'm going to show you why there is those 2 a bit later on, because both the hill of Tlachtga in Meath and the hill of Emin Macha, they're still so on fire ceremony sites in Ireland. Sadly, both stories have their own cruel rape stories, but as I would be saying, the Emin Macha one actually has a kind of happy ending. I don't know if there's religious bias there, but it's not such a serious story. But then, thinking about it, why do these Samhain sites, these fire sites, why do they have these gory, horrible rape stories? It seems awfully coarse for what is really a celebration, a part of the season's natural cycle. I've asked storytellers this when I've learned their stories. They haven't got an answer. So I've had to resort to my own interpretation, and it comes with thinking about where we are at this time in this part of the Northern Hemisphere. When people talk of rape, it could also include a deep conversation about consent, because rape comes, obviously, as we know, it's bullying, it's abuse at its worst, there's no consent. But at this time, winter's about to happen. And there the story was snow in the USA. There's no choice about that. It doesn't arrive. Weather does not arrive through our consent. Winter does not arrive through our consent. It's going to happen whether we want it or not. And a lot of us are comfortable today, but in the past, people were not protected like we are today. They didn't have sturdy homes so much, or heating and energy networks, as well as organized food storage. So for ancient people, the way I imagine it, and then, of course, it's still the same, unfortunately, for some people today, winter is a very unwanted experience and often seems like a cruel experience too. So I'm wondering if this nature story became, unfortunately, by the gory storytellers, became the rape stories through the drama expressed out of the scribing stories of the medieval patriarchal scribes, as I often talk about. So I'll leave it to you. The interpretations from these scribes Things, have they been amplified by the storytellers to create fear-mongering and even be cruel? Sadly, even today in newspapers, if a newspaper features an ancient forest burning somewhere and there's a rape case, which article gets the most prominent headlines and readership? It's very sad, but I think this has been passed down. Anyway, perhaps some comment, I'm going to leave that bit, some comments on that with the nature interpretation and with the slant. So we've obviously going through the 3 trays of the bard, started with a melancholy there. So let's go to something jolly. Last Saturday, I during the COVID session, I mentioned Ornagot Cave in Roscommon, and perhaps his best connection to his Morrigan and Raven stories. So perhaps I should attempt to explain the Ornagot Cave, the Cave of the Cats itself. Let's go back for a revision of that here. That's inside. The cat stories I've heard linked to this, I feel they're very weak stories, and they've been created as entertainment by storytellers after hearing the name Cave of the Cats. And of course, it's very popular on Facebook right now. But I believe translating Ornagot to Cave of the Cats was quite clumsy. And as often said, these old names were formed to describe conditions, not things like cats. So Owie part of it, well, that's definitely fitting for a cave because it refers to a container situation. Look at that inside. To me, that's like a container. You're going into it and you go deep down into it. So to me, that's the Owie bit sorted out. And then the gut, though it's a description of a sort of a gauntlet, obstacles to get through maybe. It's the obstacles, perhaps obstacles that you need to get through, things you might need to let go to get to the connection of the other world. And if anybody's been down Ornagat, there are obstacle stones to get down, mud, lots of mud, and pools. So as I say, Ornagat is a major subject because a lot of people say this is what sparks the Samhain. Well, this is what sparks the Halloween. So not only does Alan Trecken refer to in Ornagot Samhain stories, but also, and perhaps more so, the deeds of what you would say, a lot of people say, Morrigan, as most people call today when we go to the storytelling. And of course, last week I covered the various names, Morrigan, Morrigu, Mori, Gronier, Oronia, and my favorite, the Morna Coracune. So anyway, I'm not going to go further on it because I really went through that last Sunday, didn't I? But what I did do last Sunday is there was this lovely poem by Linda Rosewood about Ornagot. And it seems I fumbled through it because I had to, where is she? And she couldn't get here, so I fumbled for a copy. I read through it, and she reminded me that I only read about half of it. So I'm absolutely delighted to have the return of Linda Rosewood. She's actually got through this week. Here we go. And many of you loved when Susan shared a poem with us before. So here we are. Here's Linda, who's going to offer her wonderful poem. Hello, Linda.
Hi, John.
I better put my headphones on to make sure I can hear what you've got to say. Because we had headphones. Now I wonder if I can hear you. Say hello and see what happens. Oh, you're very clear. Fantastic. Yes, Linda, Ornagot. Fire away. Tell me what you feel about Ornagot.
I found this. But the can you see this? This is a bit of.
Oh yes.
This is mud from the inside of the cave. A friend of mine gave that to me. She didn't take it with her from the cave. It was on her clothes. And then she collected it and gave that mud to me. But that's what it looks like, if anyone's curious. You ready?
Oh, yes. Introduce the poem. Fire away. I'm just sitting back here relaxing and hearing your story.
All right. Ornagot. I entered the cave of the Corvid Queen. Her ladies waited in pines, calling, "Back, back, back." Doughty I undressed, crouched and bent, my bare feet finding a fissure and a stone. They tell me that stone shouts out a man's name, but in here, women will whisper. Down into the dark and wet, sliding and holding, deep and in, bare feet finding, stones and rocks and mud and magic. At the bottom lies one sharp rock to lean on, high above, too far for fingers touch the arch, a fornix, a vault, a chamber. Here I waited in the dark, not to die, not to rot, but to speak at last with the corvid queen. I entered the cave of the corvid queen on a young winter's night when fires burn unbanked, welcoming home beloved dead. I opened my ears and attended her voice, as clear as you hear my voice right now. Join my people and eat our food, dance to our music, sleep in our beds. So spoke the corvid queen, and I crossed into her cabin, not dark, but golden with firelight and bright with loving eyes, hot meat, warm bread, cold ale. I danced with the daughters of the corvid queen and sang with her sons. They dressed me in plaid woolen shawls and smooth leather boots. In one night I lived a long lifetime, welcomed to the cabin of the corvid queen. Near dawn, my friends fell around me, sleeping and fading from sight. I gave gratitude like a good guest, made to leave and never return. Take me with you, said the corvid queen. Take me to the western edge of the western island, where a palace faces the sun at the bend in the river. Bring me where the fires burn and the mountains move. Take me to my crow women of tree and sea. Long ago, my teachers taught me, sing and dance, dare even to eat, but never make a bargain with the corvid queen. I took one step in my smooth leather boots, but they dried to dust, my toes stuck in the muck. No shawl neither, no cabin warm, nor meat, nor bread, nor ale. Just me alone in a cold cave, my naked skin gray against stones. I tore my feet from the clenching mud and twisted my flesh from the sanctuary's shelf. I aimed to clamber the rocky slope toward air and light and the winter's evening. Back, 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 called the corvid queen. Take me with you. Back, back, back. You danced, you sang, you took my meat, bread and ale. She flew in my face, black wings flashing, her dark cloak soaked in blooded waters. My heart in my neck, my knees scraping raw, I bolted away from her commanding call. Halfway up, I heaved too high, struck my forehead and left my blood. My unfeeling hands like claws, I dragged onward and there, light at last. Back, 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 she called from below, but I left her bereft in her corvid cave. On the 1st of November, I returned to my home, to the western edge of the western island, safe home to my palace facing the sun at the bend in the river. Here I remember the corvid queen and her ladies waiting in pines, calling back, back, back.
Oh, wow. Big applause there. Thanks very much for that, Linda. And last, after me, probably last week.
No, it was my fault. You did well, actually.
But it's nothing like having that. These poems of yours, where do these poems go? I was looking up. Is there a website, a book, or a blog that people can get to?
I have a blog that it's basically just my letters home to my friends in Santa Cruz while I'm living in Ireland. Maybe I should put it up in your website or something, but it's called After Santa Cruz at Blogspot. And it just talks about back in the before times when we could travel around Ireland and just my reflections on Irish culture and the adventures I have and sacred places I go to and that sort of thing. So I did write about this poem in the blog. So if you're interested in some of the references to it and why I said certain things in the poem, and since every word of it is true, then you might want to just learn more about it.
Oh, that's great. Because I'm going to put a link when the show is finished. I'll put a link for now people to follow up. So that'll
I
be
think
a
some of the
great thing
people
to
that
do.
like your show might be interested in the same things that I write about in my blog. You know, Sheila
I bet they
McGee
will.
and sacred wells and crows and.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to when we've got a subject you can come back, and I'm sure there's going to be
Me
plenty.
too.
The one thing that also strikes out is that classical vintage wallpaper behind you. That's a gorgeous packing. I love it.
Isn't it beautiful? It looks really good in firelight.
I love it. It's very cozy. How is Donegal at the moment for you?
Donegal is pretty fierce out there. It's like there's a cutting wind, and it's been pretty blowy all day, but we love it. We didn't come here for the weather.
Of course not. Well, maybe you did, but in a different kind of way, not to sunbathe it. Anyway, it was lovely, to have you as a guest. I'm going to move on because there is a lot on today.
See you later.
I can't wait to get you back again. So thanks very much. Thanks. Great. At last, Linda there. And I'll get these mugs off because I don't need that now. There we go. And I'm going to move on to, I talked about where the triple-headed dragon went to two places. Let's go on to Tlachtga. There we go. There's an overhead picture. Gorgeous picture. And that's from Mystical Island. I'm going to have to put a link to that. Lovely author, writer. If you look up Mystical Island, you get lots of photographs like that. Robert Murphy, isn't it? Anthony Murphy. Anyway, that's from Mystical Island. Beautiful, and he puts his drone up there and gets these phenomenal photographs. So I'll carry on. You know, I could admire this all day. Now you're going to, but anyway, Tlachtga. And stories of Tlachtga really, they're the heart of the sacred flame. So we go to one of my photos. There we go. There's no flame there. That's just sort of in the mist. But it's one of these sacred flame places that we have reverence at around Samhain, before Samhain, through Samhain. But there's a lot of people, they know of the sacred flame of Samhain, but they haven't heard of the Tlachtga's name, which I think the throat's dry or something. Anyway, Tlachtga it is. So the hill of Tlachtga, that's the hill in the fog. It's near a small town called Atboy in County Meath. It's very easy to miss the hill because it has an incredible roots tradition. As I say, some people do call this the birth of Samhain, whereas others will say the Ornagot is. And some will actually say, well, Tlachtga is the origin of Halloween. Now, next week, I'll be going through traditions. And from what I say today, I think you'll be able to knit it and tie it to Tlachtga as well as to Tara. Now, the hill of Tlachtga is 12 miles from the hill of Tara, and a Samhain Fire Festival may well have already been hosted. I don't know if they did this year, but they have a big thing on the 31st of October. And there's a sort of sacred flame business there. There we go. And this has probably been going on at this site at some date, maybe not definitely not the October the 31st or 31st of October. I'm going to explain that in a minute. But something has been going on in this site, definitely since the time of the Tour de Dawn, and maybe as far back as 3,500 years ago. And there's been some archaeological digs there that's confirmed fires have been there for thousands of years, ceremonial fires. Well, the origin of the jack-o'-lantern, it may well have started here. There's some jack-o'-lanterns, and it may well have started here at Tlachtga, well before the Stingy Jack story, if you're familiar with that. I'm not telling it. Might tell it next week. And because this was a time where people carried fire away before there were rutabagas, swedes, turnips, before they were cultivated. And certainly thousands of years before pumpkins were ever seen on this island. So, as I say earlier, during the past 2 Sundays, I've talked about the three-headed dragon, Eileen, breathing fire on this hill. And there may be a story of lighting of the sacred fire, as I say, the origin. It's the question is the origin. But the important thing about the origin of Halloween is one of the traditions here was people taking away, I think people even now when they hold a celebration are allowed to take away some of the embers and take them away to their homes. And they would carry them away in some kind of carved vessel that allows a bit of oxygen so the flame keeps going, but not too much. And in a vessel like the jack-o'-lanterns today. And here's one here that's made with turnip. When I never really knew about pumpkins for Halloween until I was living in the USA in the 90s, because I'd always used turnips. Everybody I knew always carved these big turnips, the big Swedes, the big rudabagers. And so as soon as I came back, Scotland and Ireland, they were using pumpkins. So there was a lot of things that changed in the 90s. People started drinking Bud. There was a lot more Coca-Cola. And Halloween was a whole different ballgame through the 90s. Anyway, move along here. There's some stories telling of the embers actually going from the hill to the Hill of Tara first. And I'll explain that when I talk about Tara next week, because Hill of Tara is the place of the High King. So the stories are he's got to get his embers first and their family before the embers are distributed through the island with the island leaders. And these island leaders from the different regions, loosely called Druid, and just for your fun and entertainment to connect it all together. Here is a Druidy type person with a modern pumpkin taking it off to wherever he is. A kind of druid off. Anyway, that gives you sort of modern imagery. This is the way that's the way we've interpreted it now, isn't it? Anyway, I would like to speak about Tlachtga's father before I talk about Tlachtga herself. There's Tara. That's what we're going to be talking about next week. And again, that's another one of those mystical island pictures, isn't it? I love that. So we'll talk about that next week in the traditions. But I thought it was nice to see because maybe the first embers went to that court there. We'll see. Anyway, let's get on with Tlachtga's father. There he is, right there, an imagery of him, known as Mug Ruth. And I'm going to try and bring up some spellings. There's some spellings there. There he is. Said to have been a world traveler, and his stories are very similar to Merlin, from the King Arthur fame. I'm fumbling around with the buttons again. And the dating of Mug Ruth is very awkward. Stories put Tlachtga as being a Firbolg pre-Tour de Donan story person. But Mug Ruth, no, I got the wrong, sorry, I brought the wrong banner up for you, haven't I? Come on, let's get into the swing of it. There you go. No, that's even earlier. There's Tlachtga, just in case. I thought I had his different spellings here. Let's have a look. I thought I must have some spellings of the old man. There he is. There we go. That's it. That's it. Now you know what I'm talking about. There's Mug Ruth. Sometimes Mag Ruth as well. And you might be familiar with Mug Ruth, who is, I think, sort of known as a kind of druid of Cormac MacArt. I think I'll talk about him a bit later anyway. Anyway, Mug Ruth's stories, as well as put him in the Firbolg time, especially Tlachtga, he's been placed in the Iron Age, and he's even been a student of Simon Magus in 1480, and I'm going to show some kind of pictures of that in a moment. I haven't been to say hello to you, so I'm going to do that for a couple of minutes. Let's have a look. There's Paul Saint-Sawan goes on till May. I'll leave talking about that until next week. But you're right. The two oldest ceremonies, fire ceremonies, are Beltane and Sawan. And even Beltane, some story told or a couple of them way back in the past, have told me about Beltner even having the name of Sahan. So you've got Sahan and Sawan, and that formed a polarity. And so some people today, in the sort of holistic way, they say there's a dark side and a light side. But we think like that, don't we? We put boundaries between things and we don't consider the way that they morph to each other. A yin and yang type of thing. But yeah, Paul, thanks for saying that. That's quite a good, that is a good point to bring out. And we got good morning from Terling. Lovely to see you here. And there's Shelley, good day to you here. Rebecca, lovely to see you join in. Thank you. And Chandler, who we're going to feature later, she loved having Linda on. Fantastic. Corvid Queen is Donna's a fan of the Corvid Queen here. Great. And she loved that. And who we got here? We got Celine from Fermanagh. We got someone nearby. Lovely. Thank you. Howard's on the show. Howard, we're going to have you live on, actual live in County Roscommon. Howard's going to be on. We got, as I say, he's got a song later, but we're going to drag him on live, definitely, and say hello to you. And anyway, good morning, Gwen. Great to see you as well. And oh, a neighbour's on board, Denise. Hello, Denise. Lovely. We need to get your poems on here too, Denise. Beautiful poems. We got Leah. So we've got a lovely bunch of you on this sort of 1st of November. So anyway, I better get back and so we can get to Tlachtga. Now, what have I put up for you here? I'm trying to get the banner down so we get the full pictures here. There we go. And we're on to the Magruth. There he is. There's the first story of him. Anyway, I'm going to move on to this one. That's the first one I had of you. And I told about Simon Maga in the 1440 AD. And like Breda de Kildare, humans seem to have taken on stories of the gods and the goddesses. And it isn't something they've done themselves. It's like the people who follow them say, you're living the life that we know of the goddess, of the god. And so I think that's how they got their name. People were named by other people because they can relate them to the stories they know of the ancient goddesses and gods. And today I think we think about gods and goddesses as images that we worship. Whereas I firmly believe myself in ancient times that because they were markers of the seasons, of the weather, it was like as if they were like tools. You know, these images were essential tools for understanding what was going on. Certainly there would be reverence, but I think we worship because the way we live, we got all these comforts and we got clocks and we know dates and stuff. They didn't back then. So this was, to me, it was kind of a reverence. Now, the one common thread with the Magruth stories is they all seem to have the ability to fly. I don't know if that's Magruth, but actually that comes from a Magruth story. It came from the same period as there he is. That's actually supposed to be a picture of the young Magruth who's actually get the healing from Simon Magus. But I'm not going to go into his story. It's sort of it's a kind of a rebel Christian story, because Simon Magus certainly got onto the wrong side of the Christians, as you might know if you looked into that stuff. So let's get rid of him for now. But the variations of Magruth names and the various spellings, they come up with variations like in translation as he who spins around, as a devotee of a... I came across this diagram, which is supposed to have somehow been passed down from medieval times. It looks too perfect for that. Anyway, I was told it was passed down. And so for Magruth to be a person of a devotee of the wheel, and especially of things that go round, I think that makes him a lovely target and a great fascination for the ancient flying saucer theory fans. Or simply, it's because he was a wise man and named for being a wise man because he understood the wheel of the year and could guide people through the wheel of the year. That's one I can go along with, perhaps a bit more than the flying saucers. Certainly, there are questions in ancient times, so that's way beyond this Sunday session. Anyway, there was also this Mogruith, Mogruith, I'm going to have to get these pronunciations right. It's this dry mouth. And he was of the time of the Cormac MacArt. Now, Cormac MacArt, he was born just 3 kilometers, 2 miles away from here, Carracrory. And Cormac went on to become the longest serving High King of Ireland. And Cormac MacArt, well, he was the closest chieftain or king that brought the island of Ireland together. But we're going beyond Simon Magus' time. We're going to around 200 AD with this. So again, these are tales for another session. And we'll be explaining a bit why even Cormac MacArt wasn't that successful in his quest. Anyway, Mogruith traveled around the world, met up with Simon Magus. They said he traveled round with his daughter, Tlachtga. And I love this image of Tlachtga, in a lovely, dreamy Gothic image of Tlachtga roaming around the world on a horse, on her mule. And during this time, this woman that was called Tlachtga, or taken on the name of Tlachtga, had learned the advanced wisdoms of nature, seasons, and mathematics, and said to have learned all of these from her father. And sadly, it is said, it's another rape story, it's said that she was raped by the 3 sons of Simon Magus in 40 AD. And she gave birth to 3 sons on her return to Erin. So there's an artist's impression of a situation that Tlachtga was into. It seems to be a mishmash of the dragons. It's an imagery. I think it's to arouse a mood anyway. We go from that to the birthplace that we call Tlachtga today. And that's a lovely aerial view. And it's said that she died during the birth of the babies, of the 3 babies that she gave birth to after being raped by the 3 sons of Simon Magus. And it said these sons also naturally inherited the wisdoms of their mother and of their grandfather, the Mogruith, and became long-term, we might say, archdruids these days, or the equivalent anyway, however you looked at it. And they were kind of doing their druidry stuff in Munster, Leinster, and Connaught. And they got some names, and I think I've got some names on the banners here. There they are. That was the 3 names. These are the 40 AD, 41 AD lads. Dorva, Cummer, and Muach. So that's the names there, in case you want to quickly grab those down, if you're absolutely fascinated by that. So when it comes down to it, really, this 40 AD unfortunate incident with Simon Magus is very much related to the much more ancient Imbolc Tlachtga story. The ancient Tlachtga story is her story, the Tlachtga, is said that she was actually a woman being, a very powerful, very strong woman that also had a life of clearing away the forest to create farmland and teaching people the seasons as well. So her story is very similar to the Lunasa story of Lou's foster mother, Teochew, both doing the same sort of job, which seems pretty horrific, clearing the forests, because Ireland was pretty much covered. It was a forest terrain. But these incomers that came in, they were farmers, and that's what they did. They weren't the hunter-gatherer type. So these characters from the Tuatha De Danann and even the Firbolgs were land clearers, and somehow they became goddesses of that. Now, the ancient Tlachtga sadly was also a rape story, but this time it was the sons of Turin. And sons of Turin were sons of the imposter King Braze, who, if you go know the stories, he was kind of the leader of the Tuatha De Danann that caused, through his deeds, the Second Battle of Moytura, and was kind of half Fomorian, so he was kind of on their side too. Very complicated. And again, it said that these sons too were born on Tlachtga, and this time they didn't survive. They died in childbirth. No, a Tlachtga child. What am I on about? Tlachtga died in childbirth this time, and when she actually died, she evolved into being a goddess of the land. But these three sons who were born at this time, they weren't druidy types. They actually became chieftains of Munster, Connaught, and Breffni. So the story tells, or the storytellers tell. Now, the Connaught home of the chieftain of Connaught was said to be, if I got a picture here, of Rathner in Castle Rea. Do you know, I've made an awful mistake. This is Rathner. See how Rathner is much more better formed than, I don't know if I can pull it up again, than we saw. Now that's Tara. Let's do some comparisons here. There you go. You look here. There we go. That's Tlachtga. That's the one at Meath that's near Adboy. So I go back to the, because there's such a lot of pictures today. So that is Rathra. See how they well formed. This is sort of a ground picture. See incredible formation. A lot of people don't know where this is. It's actually near Castle Rea, not far outside. It's quite magnificent and very difficult to get on photographs and great for the wildflowers. Lovely to get there. There's enough parking for two people if you actually, two cars if you get there. Anyway, Tlachtga's name. It translates into something like Earth's Spear. And again, we need to speculate what's the condition this is describing. It's thought to be lightning, but how this is different to the full breeder name, which Bridiog Nasoyed, which translates the fiery arrow. The common thread seems to be the both Tlachtga, breeder, and Macha, which I'm going to be talking about very soon. They originated as fiery goddess images, and I got this lovely lightning on the oak, if I can actually find it. I would love to share with you somewhere here. Let's see if I can get this in the picture catalogue. It's a huge picture catalogue today, isn't it? I hope I didn't accidentally send it off. It's in here. Come on, fiery. No, I think I might have bumped it off accidentally. That's unimportant. Oh, there it is. There you go. And then I think it's incredible, that lightning on the oak. It's really sunlight, but it's very impressive. I love that photograph. Anyway, I'm glad we find that one to give you a nice imagery of these fiery goddesses. Now, the goddess images, they seem to have a way of explaining something that's going on with each of the seasons they're related to. We got the Macha and Tlachtga now, and we have breeder for Imbolc. Now, human people seem to have named these goddesses, seem to have become named after these goddesses, even back in those ancient times. So if there was a woman that was a keeper of the fire, a woman of healing, a woman of similar deeds of the stories related to the goddesses, as I've said already, they ended up acquiring that name and they lived in the human image of that goddess story. Anyway, they're all very different stories, really, breeders, Tlachtga and Macha, but eventually they all end up as sacred fire stories. Now, going back to Eileen as the sacred dragon story, I love going back to this, of course. The dragon that came out, the one that got caves at Sawan with a copper-headed birds, and she blasted fire from her breath over the hills of Tlachtga and Macha. Now, imagine lightning. As I say, refer to these goddesses of lightning. Imagine the lightning coming out of the clouds, the way the clouds shape sometimes just before the lightning comes out. I think it's very easy to imagine these clouds with the lightning taking on the shape of dragons. Have you seen clouds that actually take on the shape of dragons. I certainly have. And breathing down. There's one here, I've got a nighttime one. They haven't quite formed a dragon, but you get something like that. And there are certain conditions, I think, where you're going to believe that that is forming a dragon that's coming nearer, don't you think? A dragon that's coming nearer. And if there's lightning that comes from that, whoa, that's the dragon putting some light and over there. And you must realize that so one time, this was a time when the mead was ready. So there was a lot of mead drinking going on and also magic mushroom consuming. So I imagine after having a few hornfuls of that, and ladies not caught out, there we are, the women with their mead horns as well. Imagine with that, the imagery and visions that come out, especially the type of drinks they would have made there. And I think some of these stories well and truly would have come from that. And now this brings me back to the idea of the witch going around on a broomstick, the so-called witches that were looked upon to serve prophecies upon us, especially at this time. And to enhance their prophecies, it said they also used mushrooms and powerful herbs. Now, these are very toxic. Some of the stuff they handle, the mushrooms and herbs, very toxic. If we consume them, some of these things, suddenly our inner organs will start dismantling, a stomach especially, and we'd be gone. We'd cross the veil, and that's it. We couldn't come back. So what it is said through story is they actually pushed these substances into them anally with the help of a broomstick. And this made them get high, hence the vision of a witch zipping around on a broom. And this brings me to this. This is one that possibly didn't quite work out quite right. I'll let you ponder over that one for a moment. Anyway, another thing is the cackle of a witch as she zips around on the broom. At this time of the year, the whooper swans come in from Iceland and Greenland. They were actually much earlier this year. And they seem to fly in on a moonlit night or on a misty day. And usually when they come in, you can't see them. But the one thing you hear is the cackle of them. And there's a lovely photo there. Those are the whooper swans, in case you're not sure what they look like. And they actually form V formations. So that's where I think you get the cackle. So the ancient origin stories would have changed so much from these oral versions. There are these natural visions, and then there's the medieval scribe versions that are written down. They would have changed from the oral visions, which was what was people seeing and feeling around them, especially after they had that made. And so you've got the scribe versions and a lot of scaremongering stories out of that. And then that all changed really when the printed versions came out. Printing presses got very inexpensive early 19th century. And you got the famous broadsheets and the Celtic Romantic years. People would get together. They'd get these broadsheets on the street. I'll get my friends together. We can have a lovely social. We can have a lovely ceilidh around this. So they would reenact what they're reading in the broadsheets and share the stories. And again, after mead, whiskey, ale, whatever they had, the stories would flourish and become something different. So the biggest changes, I think, to storytelling has happened through these digital years since website booming in the 90s, where websites came up, people trying to collect these stories, but they would change quite again because of the digital fluidity. And then, of course, it's been much more so through the social media booming years of these past 15 years. Do you know, the way I hear stories now, they're very, very different to how they were told to me when I was a child. And I probably find I'm telling them different myself now. Anyway, I'm going to catch up with you for a moment here before we move on. Let's see what we got. Yeah, you're giving lovely comments today. Whoa, we're going on. The Rebecca's here. Gwen's saying, goodness, she's just shocked. Lawrence here. Happy Sawan, that is very good. In Dublin, there we go. No, Claire. There we go. Lema's back. Great. Elise. good morning. Portland. Star Regan, good morning. Dark half of the year, health, yes, half. I suppose I've been a bit mean on my sort of wishes, and I love the cross-quarter Samhain. I love where you got that point of Samhain, which is happening this year on the 7th. So to me, this is still a bit of a warm-up. Actually, it won't be a warm-up because we've got some clear frosty mornings coming towards the end of next week by the looks of it. But yes, people are trying to enjoy themselves under the conditions. So here's my warm welcome and blessings. And it is getting darker, as I was saying this morning, that sunset's before 5 o'clock here now, as from today. So that's certainly the case. So where am I? I would like to talk a little bit about the ceremony, really, that happens on Tlachtga. I did flash a kind of picture thinking, what's that? And it seems that there are now 3 different kind of Samhain Halloweeny times that are celebrated there. But the majority of people, they've adopted to this Gregorian calendar, like most people have. And that's the version of Samhain that a lot of people follow. And that's what most people know as the Halloween on October the 31st on the Gregorian calendar. The night before All Hallows, which 1st of November. And the Gregorian calendar is now, people have resisted alternatives. It's now what most of the world uses, which is quite amazing. Invented by Pope Gregory the 13th. And he introduced it on Halloween of all times in 1582 AD. So this is the calendar that we're all using to celebrate and honor these ancient times of 5,000 years ago from a Pope's calendar that was introduced at Halloween in 1582. I'll let you transcribe that however you wish. And this Pope Gregory calendar, it was an attempt to improve on the Julius Caesar calendar. I don't know when he put his together. And equally, that was a mess. The Gregorian calendar, I feel, is a mess. It doesn't relate at all to the solar system. It doesn't relate to our galaxy or the skies. There's no relation to it. Anyway, for a while, you had the Julian calendar, you had the Gregorian calendar, and it became a bit of a religious issue. It became a sort of Catholic versus Protestant issue, especially in Scotland, who, well, we're not going over to the Gregorian calendar. They stuck to the Julian calendar, which is quite amazing because they wouldn't let the Romans into Scotland, but they took their calendar. I think that's lovely. Anyway, that's what we got. So we got the 31st of October, Gregorian Day. It's the most popular gathering time for people to light and hold reverence to the Tlachtga fire, at least. And it has a theatre and festival feel. I don't have their sort of theatre and festival pictures. Shame. Here's one thing where they're burning the wheel of the year. I had to frame that kind of special. There you go. And that's at Tlachtga. That was one of the 31st of October celebrations there. And that's the sort of circus that goes on there. Actually, it sounds rude to say circus, but it's fun. It's people go for the fun. And it's reverence of being together, and people will be missing that awfully this year. I know. It's a shame. Anyway, I still think even from that event, people could go away with embers in a pumpkin or turnip or whatever the container they brought along. Now, the next gathering of reverence, as I was talking about, is at the point, the sidereal point. It's where the sidereal time is referred to. You'd have to look up the precession of the equinoxes to understand this a bit more. But this was actually calibrated thousands of years ago in Babylonian times. It's a very, very accurate calendar, and it does relate to the solar system, galaxy, universal movements. It's actually a bit of a miracle. And then perhaps might not even been sea navigational charts if it wasn't for the Babylonian ways of calibrating. So this goes way back. We have the sidereal time. It's going to be on the 7th. I forget the exact time it's going to be. But anyway, the actual point of Samhain, this is the exact halfway between the time points of the autumn equinox, fall equinox, and the winter solstice. And a fire ceremony is hosted at the first sunset after the point of the cross-quarter moment. And because the cross-quarter moment can be in the middle of daylight, as it is going to be this year. So the most common date, to say, is the Gregorian style 7th of November, and the evening after sunset. And let's have this. Maybe you got a few lovely people celebrating, having a bit of a Cayley metal together like this. But the one thing this shows is that the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Bonfire Night in England, celebrated annually. And this was done there well before Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the houses of British Parliament. It looks as if this has been around for thousands of years before that. And actually, and I'll explain next week, they have the bonfire, the guy that goes onto the bonfire. I'll talk about this a bit more next week because it's a Tara thing. And I think it originated from Tara, was templated around Wales, and from Wales it managed to spread around England. But as I say, I'll come back to that on Sunday. Now, there's a third Samhain ceremony, and this is the first new moon, or the dark moon, as some people call it today. And this is the first dark moon or new moon after the papal calendar of 31st of October. Now, this one makes the most sense, really, for most people, because really most ancient people, they couldn't recognize when the sidereal point was. There was a division. There were the educated, they were the elite, they could calculate when exactly the point of Samhain was, but someone out in the fields, they couldn't do that. So the new moon is something they could recognize, they would know, and they would have the rural leaders. And so this is when they would get together to have their reverence for this time. So that's the new moon sometime in what is now November. So the ceremony itself, do I have, oh, here's something. There we are. There's a lovely area of the new room, bringing the ravens in there. Now, a ceremony that starts with the fire, of course, the source of the fire being a Tlachtga. Let's come to them but through the dragon's breath, lightning, match, flint. Anyway, there are two mystical source stories that are told where these two come from. One's the fire created from rock on the Lambay Island in the Irish Sea, just outside the Boyne River. I think I've got a lovely Lambay. That's Lambay Island there. I'm going to have to move on here, aren't I? This is, as I say, there's such a lot today. And I've got two more guests to come. Anyway, Lambay is important in ancient times for making axes from the extremely hard and sharp andesite. But that stuff is not very good for making flints, not good for making sparks like flint does. But there are a couple of small seams of quartz, and this is a large stone of quartz here. Castle Ruddery, out in County Wicklow. And it said the fire was lit then, Lambay sailed up the Boyne River and then up to the Yellowford River, which is now the town of Atboy. And then they will get off the boat. And then there's this hinge, which is by the river. And it's at the base of what is the hill of Tlachtga. But anyway, the river said that the sacred fire flame from Lambay was carried up the Tlachtga hill to light the ceremonial fire, and later developed the whole, it was distributed around the country. Now I'm going to actually cut things short because I'm going to have to move a lot of this over to next week. But the other fire origin story is the fire lit at Carnben West on the Slieve na Kayak Bearer, known as Loughcrew to most of you. But it's not, where this happens is not a public access point. But I'm going to show you some pictures of this. Because by Carnben West is the underground source of the Yellowford River. And there's this very strange stone circle. I don't have a picture of it. I couldn't find it. But it's at its source. And at the sunrise, after the moment of the sidereal Samhain, the sun rises over Lambay Island, which you saw a picture of, and then over Cairn M on Carrickbrack. there's an actual cairn. That's the sunrise just coming up. You can see the little knoll there. That's a cairn. And this is all happening on Carnban West on Loughcrew. And then what that does, when that sun comes back over the cairn there, it lights up the top of the standing stone in Cairn L. Now, said this happens at Sawan. When this happens, and it happens at Sawan, it happens at Imbolc, the same thing, because at the same time. And a fire is lit with some flint or something, and then carried along where the underground Yellowfoot River flows. And but it's quite a walk to get to where the underground river source is, to where the Yellowfoot River is actually on the surface, and you can put a boat in it. So I'm not sure about that story. Gonna have a look closer of it. But when we go to Tlachtga, it used to be when you looked at the Ordnance Survey maps, which are delightful maps, which I've talked about in sessions here. The Ordnance Survey map, it used to be labelled the Hill of Ward. It isn't anymore. But look at that one. That's an old Ordnance Survey map. And if you look there, you'll see Atboy to the left, Hill of Ward to the right. But Ordnance Survey have changed it, and there you can actually see Tlachtga with a different spelling to what I'm using to the right-hand side there, Atboy to the left. So really, who was this Ward character? Little bit of fascination there. In late 16th century, a landowner called Ward, he took over the land and sadly pulled down a lot of the multi-henge structure. Here's an ancient picture of the multi-henge structure that was Tlachtga, that became the Hill of Ward. He just tore a lot of that down. That's why there's not much of it standing compared to Rathra. So it's not that well preserved anymore. But this Ward name comes up because there's a Ward Hill, and this is on Hoy, the only Orkney island that has mountains on it. And this, you see the nipple on the top of that. That's Ward. That's the Hill of Ward. And that is a place, that's a Sawan fire spot. And it has been for thousands of years. But they call it Ward Hill. Interesting. There's another one as well that's in South Ronaldsay. It's a flatter one, also on the Orkney Islands. So I'm going to close the exploring of Tlachtga with thinking of the main Sawan tradition of dousing the flames of the old year to rekindle the new flames of the year ahead. I'm going to cover this, plus the veil between worlds and the intimate reverence to ancestors, all that stuff next Sunday, and a bit about where the trick-or-treat that's popular in our way originated from. Now, this Sunday sessions should have been called the origin of Sawan, as I've really been doing. So next week, traditions. But now I've engaged you with quite a lot about the gruesome death of Tlachtga and the new life births of the three sons there. And it translates quite a Gothic symbolism. Think of it as a transformation from an old fire extinguished, a new flames born to grow and spread and weave new life here around in Ireland. One very intimate tradition of Sawan time is for people to write affirmations of what they are closing from the past year and what they're going to weave into the birth of the winter through to the Imbolc. Concerns, anxieties that have been compounded, that are lingering, especially anxieties and the holding on that needs forgiveness. It's the time of creating forgiveness and letting go of lusts of revenge. Put all these on paper. That's the tradition. Put all these revenges and do the forgiving act on the paper, and then burn them in the flames of the fire that's about to be extinguished. And to me, that symbolizes the transformation and cleaning. And I'm going to enlarge this further when I talk about Tara next year. And of course, this is what the churches may call is confession and washing your sins away. So I sometimes think that the gruesome stories of Tlachtga and similar horror folklore stories, they motivate us to come out of denial, expose our concerns, then shed them, And by doing so, we can ride the winter, hopefully with a cleansed soul, balanced emotions, and enthusiasm for the new life ahead. And there's some soul cleansing going on there. Now I'm going to look at your comments, and we've got 2 guests here. So let's have a quick look at you here. And I hope you don't mind me holding you a bit longer. 10:56 p.m. Thank you, Gwyn. I thought it was during the day sometime. I've been putting it on my weather report, but I'll check it again from the... where does Coligny fit in? I'm going to have to think of that word. Offhand, I'm ignorant. So here we go. That's it. That's the place for the dates, indeed. If anybody wants to take that, it's a very generous facility for getting the exact cross-quarter times for the Imbolc, for any of the 8 fire festivals. Have a go at that. astronomy.com. Get that one down. It's a lovely link, very important one, very useful. Let's see if there's anybody else. There's Gwyn here. Thank you, Gwyn, for that. Wonderful. Keith's here. Hello, Keith. Greetings to you. And Rebecca, of course. Wonderful. Right. So I'm going to move along very quickly in this overtime here. I hope you don't mind me hanging on a little bit longer, because I see 2 guests they're fabulous. I shouldn't let them wait this long, but it's just how we fit on. I haven't really spoke of Emin Macha. I would like to talk a little bit about that, and I want to prove we can't just have the south. Emin Macha, the north. It's up there in Ulster, county of Armagh. Its name was derived from Macha's name. And you're very pleased to know that Macha's is a more pleasant story. It's not exactly a rape story, but what happened was 3 lads are said to have tried to have a go with her. It said that Macha, as a goddess, became a human, and she travelled from Ulster with the curiosity of what was happening south of Benbulben here in County Sligo. And Macha was looking for 3 of the 5 sons of this Porby, a high king of Ulster. These 3 sons, they were reckless. They had ravaged Ulster just from their greed, their gluttony, just a bunch of big bullies. And they were now fugitives of Ulster, and they'd come this side of Benbulben. So Macha, in her human form, she dressed as a leper, and she went this side of Benbulben, and she found the 3 sons. They were the sides of Benbulben, of course, and they were at a campfire roasting boar that they just caught. And boar is popular in folklore stories near Benbulben. Look into the folklore stories. You'll find a few boar ones that we might bring up from time to time. Dermot and Groynia for one. Anyway, the 3 lads welcomed the leper Macha, it's getting late, and fed her. And one lad pointed out to his brothers, and Macha had beautiful, passionate eyes, and these lusted him to have his way with us. Here we go. Sounds like the rape story again. So this one brother drugged Macha into the forest with his lusting intent, but he underestimated her huge strength. She quickly wove rope from rush grasses and tied the lusty lad to a tree. And then Macha returned to the other 2 brothers, and they asked, "Where's the 3rd one going?" And she said he was so overwhelmed and embarrassed from lusting with a leper woman that he didn't want to come back, and he was too embarrassed to see brothers. But anyway, one of the 2 other brothers, he also looked into her eyes and felt a lust, and so he thought he would have a go. So he dragged her off to the woods. Same thing happened to him. He got tied up. She came back. But next happened with the 3rd brother. I'm just rushing it through. So all the 3, they're all tied up. And Macha, with her vast strength, she grabbed these 3 brothers from the tree, dragged them back to Ulster, took them north of Benbulben again, and all the Ulster people, they wanted their revenge. They wanted these 3 brothers burned and to suffer. And especially the additional story of hearing how they tried to have their way, their exclusive way with their precious fire goddess. But Margaret said, No, I've got other plans for these three. Now, to backpedal a little, Macha was, as I say, the fire goddess. No, I'll skip that and talk about it next. But we talk about the dragon setting fire. Let's see if I've got a Macha picture for you. Then you know what we're talking about. There we go. Very elegant. This is up there, up in Armagh. And that's what we're talking about. A huge, wonderful place to visit, also known as Navan Fort. So that gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. So to carry on with the Macha and the three brothers, she took a gold pin that was around her neck, and she used it to mark out a few circles around this hill. She marked out, so she enslaved these three brothers to build the walls. I don't think I got a wall picture, unfortunately. Anyway, to build these walls that went up the hill, and so that she could reside inside the hill, but above the hill was where the Ulster chieftains would be sitting, and it's where they lived, where she would be below. And the gold pin, and I'm trying to find a banner here to give the various spellings for you, because this would be quite useful, because here we go. This is where the name building comes along. There you go. Because the gold pin was a moon. And Emin Macha, and that phrase is what became Emin Macha. So that's how the name of the place came about. A little bit of extra info there for you. Anyway, they were enslaved, the brothers, the Crow brothers, and being enslaved to build the forties, you might say, to build the walls, going up, spiraling up, what they call the Navan Fort now. But it's really to be a sacred fireplace of the hill. The chieftain would oversee the fireplace. And then when the three brothers had completed that task, they were actually invited to lay with Macha down in that hill for the conception, the grand conception of midwinter, very similar to the Doida and the Morrigan stories that are around here. And I was watching a TED talk about the behavior of crows a few days ago. You may remember that I mentioned in the Crows, Ravens, and Morrigan stories last week, the conception of midwinter. Now, in that TED talk, a scientist observed the reaction of crows, and when the group died, they held a ceremony around the dead crow, and they started squawking, and then they went very quiet. But then when the squawking, they also started getting lusty and started copulating. So through that image of that, it may show, it might seem grotesque, but we can't deny the instant symbolism of the old flame extinguished, the new fire kindled, and the whole story of the midwinter grand conception. So I'll come back to that. There's a huge Scorpio link. I'd love to have had time to talk to you about that, but I've run out of time on that one. Anyway, from the seeds of the three brothers, Macha became the mother goddess in the hill there, and the kings and queens of families of Ulster were all born from there on. But at that time and before, the Ulster people, the Ruads, the whole island of Ireland never ever united. There was always Ben Baldwin or somewhere to the north. And you know, that's never happened today. There's never ever been a united island of Ireland. Yeah, Eileen, the three-headed dragon, pours fire on Tlachtga, pours fire on Emin Macha, but the two don't come together. It's an intriguing thing. North and south, two fires never quite brought together. I wish I could have talked more about that. I'm really pushing this through. But I want to get on to Chandler Nichols. Sorry for keeping you waiting as you're watching here. Here's Chandler introducing her poem for today. Absolutely beautiful.
I'm going to share with you today a dream I had and a poem that I wrote about this dream and Samhain. As I was walking to my little glade area here in the woods, I found a bunch of mistletoe that had been blown down from a tree. So this was a good find, and I'm just going to hold on to this while I do my poem. So I also brought my dog. But in this dream, I was in a cottage of sorts, And the entire back side of this cottage was windows. And so I could look out and see outside, but it was very dark. Right outside there was a stream, very clear, very beautiful, with smooth rhinestones. And I was looking at this stream when all of a sudden a fog rolled in. And I couldn't see beyond the stream, but then out of the mist came a hound, a very large hound. And it was white with red ears and red eyes, and not all too friendly looking. It was snarling and warning me not to pass any further. And of course, this was a fairy hound. The hound would snarl at me, but it could not pass through the windows, it could not come inside. But shortly after the hound appeared, a whole parade of forms came out of the mist. And they were beautiful, all sizes, some like you and me, some of it smaller. Perhaps they were fairies, or if not that, maybe spirits, ancestors visiting. They passed me by. Some of them would look my direction, some would not. There were a few that actually came inside. One of them was an old man, and the other was a young boy. And the young boy handed me a bough, and on this bough grew an apple and a flower. And of course, this might have very well been a passage to the fairy realm, but I kindly refused and sent him well on his way, and he went on. So they continued to pass by, and very last the hound followed them through, and that was it. And very reminiscent of the wild hunt, which of course occurs on Samhain, when perhaps the fairies or our ancestors or the spirits return to this earth as the veil is thin. So with that in mind, in the wild hunt in Samhain, I'm going to read to you a poem I wrote based on this dream, and I do hope you enjoy. Samhain winds are blowing now. I feel no more with the earth, but beyond. The music comes alive with the wavering boughs, the bonfires on the hillsides. Through the wildest mist and moor, lit by the moonlight colors, cool and warm, the spirits dance around us four. They travel to our world this night. Parades of them pass 'neath the moon, ethereal and haunting. What a delight! One hands us a bough of apple and bloom, guided by the hounds of the night. Where are you going, red and black hound, with your coat of shadow and your eyes of fire? Run with your rider out from the mound, hunting the souls of the lost. Come to the table and taste the wine. Fill your plate with colcannon and bread. Warm yourself by the fireside, and leave a chair empty for me. Welcome home the bloodline old. The veil is thin, and they may come. Listen to the stories they once told, that blow now in Samhain winds. Feed them well with love and light, with bellies full and hearts fuller, to tread the earth on this sacred night, before the hunter calls. But where are you going, red and white hound, with your coat of moonlight and eyes of fire? Run with your rider back to the mound, carrying the souls of the found. I'm going to mention a tradition that I do enjoy doing to honor those ancestors that might visit us on Samhain night. And that is to have a feast to share with family and friends, and always to set a plate with an empty chair for those who may be passing through, so that they may come and dine and join us for a very special night. So I do wish you very special Samhain blessings, and I pray that your ancestors, or perhaps the fairies maybe, will come and visit you this night. And Samhain blessings to you.
Great. That was lovely to have Chandler again. Thank you again, Chandler. So I'm going to race through what's coming up. Next week, it was going to be our lighted labyrinth for the Samhain, and there's a couple of pictures for that. And I was also a couple of flashes on that. And B. Smith was going to be with us, but she couldn't get on live. She couldn't get video done. She couldn't get audio done. All kinds of jinxes. And after all that, if she had come on, we probably couldn't have had her. So we'll try and get the B. Smith on next week, and for the Samhain gathering, where the tarot stuff, and I'll be continuing a lot of stuff that I haven't done today. Now, the 15th, this is going to be lovely. Claire Roach will be here mainly, and we'll be doing the introduction to harps and bardic folklore. I'll be doing an introduction to bardic folklore, and then Claire will take you through the simplicity of how you can express yourself as a bard and be part of the bardic folklore yourself. That's going to be a very special episode on the 15th. And then on the 22nd, it's back to the orb, and we're going on to the divination story then. Anyway, we got one more guest. The upcoming song, beautifully here, sung by Howard Hawksley. And here, I'm going to line it up, ready to play. And here, Howard sings under the title of The Grey Cock. It's also known as Willie's Ghost. And you may know it from different interpretations and different titles. It may be familiar, Gwen will know this one, as the Night Visitors or the Night Visiting or Night Visitors song, which was made popular by Luke Kelly and the Dubliners, and also the Tannahill Weavers. But in that song, the lad was not a ghost in the Night Visitors song, but the cockerel still awoke the lad and his lover. And then there's other variations of the song. And they bring in the Randy Soldier then. You've got As I Roved Out, Cold, Haily, Windy Night, Gentleman Soldier, and 16 Comes Sunday. But Howard's version of the Grey Cock coming up, it's got a lovely history. It's from Cecilia Costello, who was born in England of Irish descent, Nick Kelly. And she first had it recorded in 1951, but it really didn't get onto an LP until 1972. Now, Cecilia picked up the song from an Irish song collector from Limerick, Patrick Joyce, and he said that he was taught to him as a boy way back in 1830. Now, Cecilia's version was sort of copied by Martin Carthy very soon after her recording, but it seems to be made more popular by his daughter, Eliza Carthy. Now, before Howard sings it, one more thing. We are familiar with the morning cock crowing, but there's other world folklore from China. This is a world thing, and it tells that the loud morning bird song that wakes us up brings us back from the other world and awakens us back into this new world. So here is Howard Hawksley. He's going to perform beautifully his interpretation of the Grey Cock. Thank you for sending this, Howard, this additional song. I've got the soundtrack with lyrics here. There's slight differences, but I hope you'll be able to follow it. The Grey Cock, here we go.
I must be going, no longer staying. The burning Thames I have to cross. Oh, I must be guided without a stumble into the arms of my dear lass. When he came to his true love's window, he knelt down gently on a stone, and it's through a pane he whispered slowly, my dear girl, are you alone? Well, he rose her head from her down soft pillow, and snowy were her milk-white breast, saying, who's there at my bedroom window, disturbing me from my long night's rest? Well, I'm your love, but I can't uncover. I pray you rise, love, and let me in, for I am fatigued from my long night's journey. Besides, I am wet into the this young girl rose and put on her clothing. She quickly let her own true love in, and they kissed, shook hands, and embraced together till that long night was near an end. Then it's Willie dear, oh dearest Willie, where is that colour you some time ago? And it's Mary dear, the clay has changed me, I am but the ghost of your Willie-o. Then so cock, oh, handsome cockerel, I pray you not crow before it is day, for your wings I'll make of the finest gold, and your comb I'll make of the silver grey. But this cock it crew, and it crew so fully, it crew 3 hours before it was day, and before its day my love had to leave me, not by the light of the moon or sun. Then it's Willie dear, oh dearest Willie, when shall I ever see you again? When the fish they fly, love, and the seas run dry, love, and the rocks they melt in the heat of the sun.
Ah, wow. I trust you enjoyed that from Howard. Lovely to have him back again. Thank you, Howard, if you're still here, watching to see if you were on. Last look at your comments here. And Linda enjoyed the poem. Thanks for sharing with us. That must be with Chandler. And okay. All right. Well, thank you. So many thanks to you, Linda, for getting on live, and Chandler for the beautiful recording. And eventually we got to Howard, and hopefully we'll get him live. Let's see if we can get him in the next week or two. I'd like to ask, please, it's been a long session, this one. Sorry for keeping you a bit longer. There's such a lot of so on. But keep commenting here if you're watching this after it was live. It's in the archive forever. So really, what I need to do is wish you a fantastic, lovely week full of inspiration, crossing over the veil and back again, all the celebrations and enchantments, spirits raising, and that, of course, we're being challenged with that now, but keep those spirits up. So until next Sunday, thank you all, play well, and it's bye. Bye.